The standoff lasted for 3 weeks. Colonel Yuna's fleet remained at the collective homeworld, weapons ready but not firing. On Earth, Commander Velthrak's forces held their positions in occupied territories but launched no new attacks. Both sides waited to see if peace was possible, or if it was just a dream that would die in fire. High Counselor Rentok of the Collective called an emergency meeting of the Ancient Council. Beings who had lived for tens of thousands of years gathered to discuss something they had never seriously considered. Surrender was not the right word. Neither was peace. This was something stranger and more difficult. This was choosing to trust a species they had tried to exterminate. The humans could destroy our homeworld, Rentok told the council, but they choose not to. This is not weakness. This is a kind of strength we have never encountered. They fight like gods when threatened, but they offer mercy when they could take revenge. I do not understand them, but I believe we must try. An old counselor named Zethral spoke. For 500 million years we have lived by one rule. Conquer before being conquered. If we abandon this rule, what will protect us? Perhaps, Rentok said, the thing that will protect us is no longer needing protection. Perhaps the greatest safety is not having enemies at all. The council voted. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. The collective would propose a treaty with Earth. Not surrender. Not victory. Something new. On Earth, Counselor Terran faced his own challenges. Many humans wanted revenge. 400 million people had died. Cities had been destroyed. How could anyone negotiate with the species responsible for that pain? Nari spoke at a gathering in Busan. At 13 years old, she had become a voice that people listened to. My father died fighting the collective, she said. I will never forget that. I will never stop hurting from that loss. But I have used the memory bridge. I have felt what the collective feels. They are afraid, just like us. They attack because they do not want to be victims again. If we destroy them, we become the new cycle of violence. Someone else will fear us and attack us, and the killing will never stop. A man in the crowd shouted, "They killed my children. How can you ask me to forgive that?" Nari looked at the man with tears in her eyes. I am not asking you to forgive. I am asking you to choose what kind of future you want. Do you want revenge, or do you want your grandchildren to live in peace? Because we cannot have both. The man said nothing, but his anger remained on his face. Nari understood. Some wounds were too deep for words. But maybe with time, they could heal enough for people to move forward. Dr. Jiho improved the memory bridge device and made it available worldwide. Thousands of humans and collective soldiers used it. Not everyone who tried it changed their minds about the war. But enough did that a movement for peace began to grow. Salmon and Daehyun used their resistance network to spread Nari's message. The war is not over, Soman told her fighters. But maybe we can choose how it ends. We can end it with everyone dead, or we can end it with everyone learning to live together. I know which one I prefer. Commander Velthrak met with Counselor Terran again, this time with Colonel Yuna joining them via video link from the collective homeworld. Together they drafted a treaty that seemed impossible. The collective would withdraw all forces from Earth and pay reparations for the damage they had caused. In exchange, Earth would share the memory bridge technology and work with the collective to understand human psychology and emotions. More importantly, the treaty established something called the Joint Defense Initiative. Both species would share military technology and work together to protect against future threats. The galaxy was large. Other dangers existed. Together, humans and the collective could face them. Alone, they would eventually fall. This treaty requires trust, Velthrak said. Neither of our species is good at trust. Then we will learn, Terran said. Humans have learned many impossible things during this war. We can learn this too. The treaty was broadcast to both civilizations. The reaction was mixed. On Earth, some cities celebrated in the streets. Others protested, demanding that the war continue until the collective was destroyed. On the collective homeworld, some saw the treaty as shameful surrender. Others saw it as the end of 500 million years of fear. Nari was invited to speak at the official treaty signing ceremony. At 13 years old, she would address the leaders of two civilizations. She was terrified. She was also ready. I lost my father in this war, Nari said. Her voice broadcast to billions of beings across multiple worlds. Many of you lost people you loved. That pain does not go away just because we sign a treaty, but my father's last words were, "Tell them we never stop fighting." I have thought about those words every day, and I realize now what he meant.
He did not mean we should never stop fighting the collective.
He meant we should never stop fighting for what is right, and what is right is not revenge. What is right is making sure no other child has to lose their father the way I did. What is right is breaking the cycle of violence so that future generations can live in peace. High Counselor Rentok spoke next. We conquered 10,000 species over 3 million years. We thought this made us strong. But the humans have taught us that true strength is not the power to destroy. True strength is the courage to choose differently. We came to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, we found a mirror showing us what we had become. Monsters driven by ancient fear. The humans defied us like gods, and in doing so, they reminded us that even gods can change. The treaty was signed by representatives of both species. Counselor Terran and High Counselor Rentok placed their marks on the document. Commander Velthrak and Colonel Yuna added their signatures. And at the end, Nari signed too, representing all the children who had grown up too fast because of war. The next 10 years brought changes that would have seemed impossible before the war. Dr. Jiho became Chief Scientific Officer of the Earth Collective Research Alliance. He led teams that combined human creativity with collective technology to make discoveries that benefited both species. Medicine advanced by centuries. Faster-than-light travel became safer and more efficient. New worlds were explored and settled peacefully. Colonel Yuna was promoted to Admiral and given command of the Joint Defense Fleet. She led ships crewed by both humans and collective members, exploring the dangerous regions of space where other threats lurked. Her ships discovered 17 new intelligent species and made peaceful contact with all of them. The galaxy was learning that conquest was not the only option. Nari grew into a young woman of 23. She became humanity's youngest ambassador, traveling between worlds to teach other species about resilience, hope, and the power of choosing peace over violence. She carried her father's memory with her always. In every speech she gave, she mentioned him. She made sure the galaxy knew that Hyunwoo, a simple engineer from Busan, had changed the course of history by refusing to give up. In Busan, where Hyunwoo had made his last stand, a monument was built. It was a simple structure made of stone and metal, but the words carved into it were powerful. Tell them we never stop fighting. Thousands of people visited the monument every year, both humans and collective members. They came to remember the cost of war and the courage it took to choose peace. Someone became the governor of the rebuilt Busan. She worked with former resistance fighters and former collective soldiers to create a city that represented the new future. The city was a symbol of what could be accomplished when former enemies chose to build together instead of destroy each other. Daehyun returned to being a doctor, but now he treated both humans and collective patients. He learned alien biology and became one of the leading experts in cross-species medicine. He often thought about the years he spent fighting instead of healing. He was glad those years were over. Commander Velthrak retired from military service and spent his final years on Earth. He wrote a memoir called The Gods Who Taught Us. In it, he reflected on everything he had learned from humans. We thought we were gods among mortals, he wrote. We discovered too late that humans do not fear gods. They remind gods that divinity is not about power. It is about refusing to surrender to entropy, to darkness, to inevitability. Humans defy gods because they understand what gods forgot. The greatest power is not dominion over others. The greatest power is defiance against fate itself. The book became required reading for both human and collective young people. It taught them about the dangers of fear-driven violence and the possibility of choosing a different path. High Counselor Rentok lived another 15 years after the treaty was signed. In that time, the ancient being worked to transform the collective from an empire of fear into a civilization of cooperation. It was not easy. Many resisted, but slowly the change happened. When Rentok died, humans and collective members mourned together. Both species had lost a leader who had the courage to try something new. Counselor Terran continued his work at the United Nations, now expanded to include representatives from the collective and 17 other species. The organization became the Galactic Council, dedicated to resolving conflicts peacefully and promoting cooperation across the stars. Terran served as its first Secretary General until his retirement at age 75. They expected thanks. Humans gave retribution instead. The red alarm lights flashed across the medical center in Seoul. Tae-ho Kim stood at the window of the hospital, watching the streets below fill with emergency vehicles. Bodies were being carried out of buildings faster than the morgues could handle them. The Red Death had spread across Earth in just 6 months, and now billions were dying. Tae-ho was a captain in the United Earth Defense Force, but his weapons were useless against this enemy. The plague turned human blood into a thick red sludge. Victims usually died within 3 days of showing symptoms. The scientists had tried everything. Nothing worked. Earth was dying and everyone knew it. That morning, something appeared in the sky. Massive ships bigger than mountains simply appeared above every major city on Earth. They didn't attack. They just waited. For 3 hours, the world held its breath, wondering if this was the end. Then they sent a message. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Union. We have watched your suffering. We can help. The message came in every language, broadcast on every device across the planet. Within hours, a shuttle landed near the United Nations building in New York. The aliens who stepped out were tall, with smooth silver skin and large dark eyes. They called themselves Veltharians. Their leader, Ambassador Quilnix, asked to meet with Earth's leaders immediately. Tae-ho was assigned to the security team that escorted the aliens to the orbital station Genesis, which floated above Earth's atmosphere. He watched as President Jin-Woo Choi and his advisors sat across from the Veltharians. The aliens' translator device made their words sound warm and friendly. We have a cure for your plague, Quilnix said. We can save your people, all of them. The room went silent. President Choi leaned forward slowly. What do you want in return? Quilnix smiled, or at least made an expression that looked like a smile. We want Earth to join the Galactic Union. You would become part of our great civilization. In exchange for the cure, we ask only that humanity agrees to a period of guided membership. 50 years. During this time, your military forces would serve under Union command for peacekeeping operations across the galaxy. Peacekeeping operations? Tae-ho's commander, General Minho Park, asked from the back of the room. Yes, the galaxy is a dangerous place. We protect smaller civilizations from threats. Your people would help us maintain peace. It's an honor, really. A way for humanity to contribute to the greater good while learning from older, wiser species. Commander Yuna Park, Earth's chief medical officer, was brought in to examine the cure. She was a sharp woman who trusted nothing without proof. The Veltharians gave her samples and complete data on their treatment. She spent 3 days in the lab, running every test she could think of. Tae-ho stood guard outside her lab, listening to her frustrated mumbling through the door. On the 3rd day, she emerged looking exhausted but amazed. It works, she said quietly. It actually works. This cure will stop the Red Death completely. I've never seen anything like it. The decision fell to President Choi. Every day they delayed, millions more died. The hospitals were overflowing. Cities were running out of places to bury the dead. Some areas had started burning bodies just to prevent more disease from spreading. Tae-ho was in the room when the president made his choice. Choi looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His hands shook as he held the pen. We have no choice, he said. If we refuse, humanity dies. If we accept, at least we survive. He signed the Treaty of Salvation. The Veltharians smiled and bowed respectfully. Within hours, their medical ships descended on every nation. The cure was distributed freely, just as promised. It worked exactly as Yuna had said it would. Within 2 weeks, the Red Death was gone. Within a month, Earth was recovering. The celebrations lasted for days. People danced in the streets. Churches, mosques, temples, and synagogues overflowed with grateful prayers. Statues of Ambassador Quilnix were erected in major cities. Earth had been saved. Humanity had joined something bigger than itself. Tae-ho felt the same relief as everyone else. His sister had been sick with the Red Death. The cure saved her life. He owed the Veltharians everything. When the order came for him to report for his new assignment with the Union forces, he went proudly. That's when things started to change. Lieutenant Sung-Jin Lee was assigned to Tae-ho's unit, along with Corporal Hana Yang and 50 other human soldiers. They were told they would be part of a peacekeeping force on a distant world called Kelris IV. The briefing said there was a small conflict between 2 local factions, and the Union needed troops to maintain order until diplomacy could work. When they arrived on Kelris IV, they found something very different. The planet's atmosphere was toxic to most species in the Union. The air burned alien lungs and ate through their protective equipment. But humans, for some reason, could breathe it with just basic filter masks. Your mission is simple, their Veltharian commander told them through a video screen from the safety of his ship in orbit. Clear the mining facilities of hostile forces. The Union needs those resources. Sungjin looked at Taiho with confusion. Sir, this doesn't sound like peacekeeping. This sounds like an invasion. We follow our orders, Taiho replied, but doubt was already creeping into his mind. The fighting was brutal. The hostile forces were locals defending their homes from Union mining operations. They had crude weapons but fought desperately. 12 humans died in the first day. The Veltharian commander called it an acceptable loss and ordered them to continue. Over the next 6 months, Taiho's unit was sent to 5 different worlds. Each mission was the same. Humans were sent into places too dangerous for other species. They fought battles that seemed less about peace and more about taking resources. The casualties mounted. For every human who died, the Union simply sent more. During a supply run back to the Union station, Taiho overheard 2 Veltharian officers talking. They didn't know he understood their language. He had been learning it in his spare time. The humans are more useful than we expected, one said. They can survive in environments that would kill us. And they breed fast enough that the losses don't matter. Good thing we found them when we did, the other replied. That plague timing was perfect. Taiho's blood went cold. He didn't say anything. He couldn't prove what he'd heard. But the words stayed with him. That plague timing was perfect. What did that mean? He started paying closer attention to the missions, the orders, the way the Union used human troops. A terrible suspicion began to grow in his mind. Had humanity really been saved? Or had they simply traded one death for another, slower kind? But Earth was recovering. His sister was alive. Billions of humans had been saved from extinction. Surely that debt was worth paying. Surely the sacrifice was necessary. Taiho told himself that every night. But it got harder to believe as more friends died in battles that seemed designed to spend human lives as cheaply as possible. The 50-year treaty had just begun. Taiho had a terrible feeling that things were going to get much worse before they got better, if they ever got better at all. They expected thanks. Humans gave retribution instead. 20 years had passed since the Treaty of Salvation was signed. Captain Hyunwoo Song stood on the bridge of the transport ship, carrying what remained of the 7th Human Expeditionary Force. They had just finished fighting in the Ash Wars, a brutal conflict on a planet covered in volcanic dust and toxic gas. Of the 3,000 humans who had started the campaign, only 800 were coming home. The rest were buried in shallow graves on a world whose name most people on Earth would never even hear. Hyunwoo looked at his reflection in the dark window. He was only 42 years old, but he looked 60. His hair had gone gray. His hands shook sometimes. He had stopped counting how many friends he had lost after the number passed 100. Back on Earth, Major Nari Kang sat in a small office in Geneva, surrounded by files and data screens. Her job was to track human casualties in the Union forces. The numbers made her sick. Of the 2 million humans who had been conscripted into Union service over the past 20 years, fewer than 500,000 were still alive. The death rate was staggering. Human troops were sent into situations that no other species would survive. Chemical weapons, radiation zones, extreme temperatures, hostile atmospheres. Every time there was a mission too dangerous for other Union species, they sent humans. Nari had started compiling a secret report. She documented every mission, every casualty, every pattern of abuse. But she couldn't show it to anyone, not yet. Speaking out would be considered treason against the Union. Earth needed the Union's technology and trade. The government couldn't afford to anger their alien saviors. Sergeant Dongwoo Han was fighting on the front lines of a border war when he found something that changed everything. His squad had been sent to secure a crashed Union intelligence ship. The mission briefing said they needed to recover the data cores before enemy forces arrived. Dongwoo and his team fought their way through hostile territory for 3 days. When they finally reached the crashed ship, half his squad was dead. But they got the data cores. Dongwoo, who had been a computer programmer before joining the military, decided to check what was so important that 12 humans had died to retrieve it. What he found made his hands shake with rage. The files contained communications between Veltharian military scientists from 30 years ago. They discussed something called Project Genesis. The documents described the creation of a biological weapon designed specifically to target human biology. The weapon was the Red Death. There were messages discussing deployment methods, timing recommendations, projected casualty rates, and then, at the end, there were congratulations on the successful field test and notes about the cure that had been prepared in advance. The Red Death hadn't been a natural plague. It had been created by the Veltharians. They had deliberately infected Earth with a disease they had engineered. Then they had offered the cure in exchange for 50 years of human service. Dongwu sat in the wreckage of that ship for an hour, reading the files over and over, making sure he understood correctly. His mind struggled to accept what he was seeing. The species that had saved humanity had first tried to destroy it. The grateful debt Earth felt was based on a lie. He encrypted the files and sent copies to several people he trusted. One of them was Colonel Jiwan Nam, a decorated officer who had served in Union forces for 18 years. Jiwan had always been suspicious of how conveniently the Veltharians had appeared with a cure. Now she had proof. Jiwan called a secret meeting with other senior human officers. They met in an abandoned mining facility on a distant moon, where Union surveillance couldn't reach them. 12 humans gathered in that cold, dark room. Each of them commanded significant forces scattered across the galaxy. "We can't reveal this information," Jiwan said, her voice hard and cold. "Not yet. We're spread across 100 worlds. We have no unified command structure of our own. If we rebel now, the Union will destroy us. They'll say we're traitors and Earth itself could be punished. So what do we do?" Hyunwoo asked. He had been invited to the meeting because of his reputation as a survivor and leader. "We wait," Jiwan replied. "We have 28 years left on the treaty. We use that time to prepare. We document everything. We learn everything we can about Union technology, tactics, and weaknesses. And when the treaty ends, we give the Union a choice, justice or war." The others agreed. It was a long time to wait, but they were patient. Humans had learned patience the hard way. They made a pact. They would continue to serve, continue to follow orders, continue to die in Union wars. But they would also prepare. Every battle would be a lesson. Every captured weapon would be studied. Every Union ship they served on would be mapped and analyzed. In secret facilities hidden across multiple star systems, humans began building their own future. Weapons engineer Suman Choi reverse-engineered Union plasma rifles and improved them. She made them more efficient, more reliable, and easier to produce with limited resources. Former scientist Yoon Bai had been conscripted as a combat medic. But in her spare time, she studied Union surveillance technology. She found ways to block their sensors, hide communications, and create blind spots in their monitoring systems. Commander Junho Seo started building a secret communication network. It used quantum encryption that Union sensors couldn't detect. He called it Homeward. Every human officer in the galaxy was quietly connected to this network. They could share information instantly without the Union knowing. On Earth, things looked peaceful. The planet had recovered from the Red Death. Cities were rebuilt. The population was growing again. People celebrated Union Day every year, grateful for their salvation. Statues of Veltharian leaders stood in public squares. Children learned in school about the generous aliens who had saved humanity, but in military academies things were different. Young officers like Lieutenant Boram Shin and Ensign Daeho Yoon were taught the official curriculum about serving the Union with honor, but their instructors, veterans like Major Nari Kang, taught them other things too. Subtle lessons about questioning orders, looking for patterns, remembering that loyalty to humanity came before loyalty to the Union. The Union leaders noticed nothing wrong. They saw humans as they expected to see them, grateful, obedient, and useful. Human troops continued to take the most dangerous assignments. They continued to die at alarming rates, and they continued to say yes, sir, and thank you for the opportunity. Behind the grateful smiles and formal salutes, something was growing. Knowledge was being gathered. Skills were being honed. Resources were being hidden away. Every human soldier who died was remembered. Every injustice was documented. Every weakness in Union defenses was noted and filed away. In the 30th year of the treaty, Admiral Min Ji-oh became the highest-ranking human in the Union military. She had worked her way up from private, surviving battles that killed everyone around her. She was smart, diplomatic, and seemingly loyal to the Union cause. The Veltharians loved her. They gave her medals and praised her as an example of human potential. They invited her to important meetings and asked her advice on military matters. They trusted her completely. That was their first mistake. Minji used her position to access classified information. She learned about Union fleet deployments, defense networks, supply lines, and command structures. She passed all of it through the homeward network to other human commanders. The pieces were slowly coming together. The trap was being set. But it would take patience. More waiting, more dying, more smiling at the people who had poisoned their world and turned them into slaves. 20 years to go. The humans could wait. They had become very, very good at waiting. And when the time came, the galaxy would learn what happened when you saved a species just to exploit them. When you cured a plague you had created yourself. When you mistook human gratitude for human weakness. The Veltharians thought they had saved humanity. In reality, they had created their own worst nightmare. They just didn't know it yet. They expected thanks. Humans gave retribution instead. The 48th year of the treaty arrived with little celebration. Most humans in the Union forces had stopped counting years. They just focused on surviving one more day, one more mission, one more battle. Admiral Mingio walked through the halls of Veltharia Prime, the capital world of the Veltharian Empire. She wore her dress uniform, covered in medals she had earned with human blood. The Veltharians who passed her in the corridors nodded respectfully. She was a model officer, proof that the system worked. She hated every second of it. Minji had been invited to the Strategic Council chambers for a high-level meeting about the future of Union expansion. It was a great honor, they told her. Very few non-Veltharians ever entered those chambers. She smiled and thanked them for the privilege. The meeting was boring. Various officials talked about trade routes and diplomatic relations with distant civilizations. Minji sat quietly, looking attentive but saying little. After 3 hours, the meeting ended. Most officials filed out, but Minji noticed High Chancellor Velrix and War Minister Thalnos remained behind, talking quietly. She pretended to review some documents on her datapad while moving slowly toward the exit. She was close enough to hear their conversation. They didn't know she understood their native language perfectly. Most humans didn't bother learning it. That had been another mistake the Veltharians made. The human treaty expires in 2 years, Thalnos said, his voice concerned. What do we do when they're no longer obligated to serve? Velrix laughed. It was a cold, amused sound. They'll sign another treaty. We simply make it seem necessary. Perhaps another crisis. Maybe a new threat that requires their unique abilities. And if they refuse, then we eliminate their leadership and call it a tragic accident. The rest will fall in line. They're grateful to us, Thalnos. We saved their species. Humans are pack-bonded and emotionally driven. They'll accept whatever terms we offer out of misplaced loyalty. Thalnos still looked worried. Some of our intelligence reports suggest the humans have been preparing for something. Building things, organizing. Velrix waved his hand dismissively. Paranoid nonsense. They're soldiers. They follow orders. That's what we trained them to do. Besides, what could they possibly do? We have the largest fleet in the galaxy. We control their supply lines. We monitor their communications. Even if they wanted to rebel, they couldn't. Minji kept her face completely neutral as she left the room. Her hands wanted to shake with rage, but she controlled them. Years of practice had taught her to hide her emotions perfectly. She returned to her private quarters and activated a signal that looked like normal background radiation. Within minutes, Commander Junho Seo's face appeared on her secure communication device. He looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. I've been expecting your call, Junho said quietly. Something happened. Minji told him everything she had heard. Junho's expression grew darker with each word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. So that's it then, he finally said. They plan to extend our slavery by force or eliminate us entirely. It's time, Minji replied. Activate Homeward. Send the message to everyone. Every human soldier, officer, and crew member in the galaxy. They need to know the truth, Junho nodded. The full truth? Everything? Everything. The Red Death was manufactured by them. The cure was prepared in advance. We were deliberately infected, enslaved, and exploited for 50 years. And now they plan to continue it by whatever means necessary. Within 1 hour, encrypted messages flashed across the galaxy through the Homeward network. They reached humans on 1,000 different worlds. Soldiers in the middle of battles, officers on Union ships, engineers in weapons facilities, medics in field hospitals. The messages contained video evidence of the Project Genesis files, recorded conversations like the one Minji had just overheard, casualty statistics showing the deliberate waste of human lives, financial records showing how Earth's resources had been extracted under unfair trade agreements. The truth spread like fire. Every human in Union service saw the evidence with their own eyes. Lieutenant Borum Shin was on patrol duty when she received the message. She sat down in an empty corridor and watched the videos 3 times. Then she cried for 10 minutes. Then she stopped crying, wiped her face, and went back on patrol as if nothing had happened. Sergeant Kyung Park was in the middle of a firefight when his helmet display showed him the message notification. He kept fighting, killed the enemy soldiers shooting at his position, and only checked the message when the battle was over. He read it twice, then quietly told his squad. They all nodded and went back to cleaning their weapons. Commander Xianwu Li was having dinner with Veltharian officers when the message came through. He smiled and laughed at their jokes while reading about genocide and slavery on his datapad under the table. When dinner ended, he shook their hands and thanked them for the pleasant evening. Across the galaxy, the human reaction was the same. There were no riots, no dramatic confrontations, no angry outbursts. Instead, there was something the Veltharians had never seen before: silence. Humans stopped making small talk with their alien commanders. They answered questions with simple yes or no responses. They followed orders with mechanical precision but showed no initiative or enthusiasm. Their faces became masks that showed nothing. The Veltharians noticed something was different, but they couldn't identify what. Human troops still performed their duties. They still won battles. They still followed orders. But something fundamental had changed in the way they did it. The humans seem odd lately, a Veltharian captain mentioned to his second officer. Less friendly, more distant. They're probably just tired, the officer replied. They've been fighting for almost 50 years. Can you blame them? Neither of them realized they were watching the calm before a storm. With 1 year and 8 months remaining on the treaty, humanity began final preparations. Every human commander received their assignments through Homeward. Supply Officer Jisoo Han started redirecting weapons and equipment to hidden locations. Ships that had been declared destroyed in combat were actually hidden in abandoned systems, being repaired and upgraded. Captain Min Seok Choi commanded a salvage operation that had officially destroyed 12 derelict Union warships. In reality, those ships were being restored in secret shipyards built inside asteroid fields. Human engineers had spent years learning how Union technology worked. Now they were using that knowledge to build their own fleet. Intelligence Officer Jin Woo Baek had compiled a complete database of Union military capabilities. Every fleet position, every defense station, every supply depot, every command center. The information had been gathered over decades by thousands of humans in thousands of different positions. Now it was all in one place, organized and ready to use. Dr. Yuna Shin led a team of scientists who had developed countermeasures to every known Union weapon system. They had paid special attention to biological weapons. If the Veltharians tried to deploy another plague, humanity would be ready. The clock ticked down. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The Veltharians prepared their new treaty, confident it would be signed. They even planned a celebration for when the humans agreed to their terms. Humans across the galaxy waited. They cleaned their weapons. They maintained their ships. They drilled their troops, and they counted down the days until midnight on the day the treaty expired. The Veltharians expected gratitude and compliance. They expected negotiations and eventual agreement. They expected humans to remain the grateful, obedient servants they had always been. They were about to learn how badly they had misunderstood the species they had tried to enslave. 45 days left. The humans could wait just a little longer. They expected thanks. Humans gave retribution instead. The last day of the treaty was quiet. Too quiet. Across the galaxy, human soldiers went about their duties with the same mechanical efficiency they had shown for months. They saluted their officers. They maintained their equipment. They followed every order to the letter. At Union headquarters on Veltharia Prime, High Chancellor Velrix reviewed the new treaty one final time. It extended human service for another 50 years with even more restrictive terms. Humans would have limited access to advanced technology. Earth would pay higher fees for Union protection. Human military forces would be permanently integrated into Union command structure with no independent operations allowed. They'll complain, of course, Velrix told his advisors. But they'll sign. They always do. Where else can they go? We control all the trade routes. We have all the advanced technology. Earth needs us more than we need them. War Minister Thalnos was less confident. The humans have been behaving strangely. Our intelligence reports increased equipment movements, unusual communication patterns, ships disappearing from standard patrol routes. Desertion, probably, Velrix said with a shrug. After 50 years, some humans are bound to run away. We'll hunt them down later. The important thing is that the majority will comply. They're grateful creatures. We saved them. At exactly 23:55 Universal Standard Time, 5 minutes before the treaty expired, every human soldier in the galaxy received a message through the Homeward network. It was 3 words long. Justice begins now. At 00 Universal Standard Time, the treaty officially ended. Velrix transmitted his expected message across all Union channels. It was flowery and diplomatic, thanking humanity for their service and presenting the new treaty for immediate signing. At Aero 01, something unprecedented happened. Every human soldier in the galaxy simultaneously stopped following Union orders. They didn't attack. They didn't riot. They simply stopped obeying. On 17 different worlds, human troops walked away from their posts. They left Union bases, taking their weapons and equipment with them. When Veltharian officers tried to stop them, the humans simply kept walking. When asked where they were going, they didn't answer. At 002, Admiral Minji-O's face appeared on every Union communication channel across the galaxy. Her message was broadcast in every known language. Her voice was calm, cold, and absolutely final. People of the galaxy, this is Admiral Minji-O of the Terran Defense Force. For 50 years, humanity has served the Galactic Union faithfully. We were told we owed a debt for being saved from the Red Death Plague. Today, we present evidence that the plague was created by Veltharian scientists as a weapon. The cure was prepared in advance. Our salvation was manufactured to create our enslavement. She paused, letting that sink in across 1,000 worlds. We have fulfilled every obligation of the Treaty of Salvation. The debt, such as it was, is now paid. What follows is not revenge. What follows is justice. At 003, coordinated strikes began across Union space. The targets were all military installations. No civilian centers were hit. No population centers were attacked. But every Union military facility within human reach was suddenly under assault. General Taiho Park, now an old man but still commanding respect, led the assault on Tarn Station, the Union's primary weapons manufacturing facility. His forces had infiltrated the station weeks earlier, disguised as maintenance workers and supply personnel. When the signal came, they moved with perfect precision. The station's garrison of 2,000 Union soldiers never had a chance. The humans knew every corridor, every defense point, every security system. The battle was over in 40 minutes. 0 civilian casualties. The entire military garrison eliminated or captured. The facility secured intact. Across the galaxy, similar operations unfolded. Humans had spent decades learning Union tactics and weaknesses. Now they used that knowledge with devastating efficiency. Station after station fell. Defense platforms went dark. Supply depots were captured or destroyed. The Union fleet tried to respond, but they faced a problem. Commander Hyunwoo Yang led a strike force that had been hiding in deep space for months. They emerged near the Union's primary FTL communication array and destroyed it with 6 precision strikes. Suddenly, Union fleets couldn't coordinate with each other or receive orders from Central Command. Major Sungjin Kim commanded a squadron of stealth frigates that humans had been building in secret for years. They were smaller than Union warships but faster and harder to detect. His squadron hit Union supply convoys, cutting off fuel and ammunition to their battle groups. Captain Hana Lee's forces targeted automated defense platforms around major Union worlds. These platforms were designed to be impregnable fortresses, protected by the best Union technology. But humans had been maintaining those platforms for decades. They knew every access code, every system vulnerability, every weak point in the armor. The platforms fell like dominoes. By hour 12, the Union's defensive network was reduced by 40%. In desperation, the Veltharians made a fatal decision. War Minister Thalnos authorized the deployment of biological weapons against Earth itself. If they couldn't control humanity, they would eliminate the threat at its source. 3 Union ships entered Earth's solar system carrying bioweapon payloads. They were met by Commander Junho Seo's defense fleet. The battle was brief and brutal. All 3 Union ships were destroyed before they could release their weapons, but one escape pod made it through. It crashed in the Pacific Ocean and released its bioweapon into the water. Within hours, detection systems on Earth picked up traces of a plague spreading through coastal cities. Dr. Yuna Shin's team was ready. They had prepared for this exact scenario. The countermeasures were deployed within 6 hours. The plague was neutralized before it could kill more than a few hundred people. The Veltharians' final weapon had failed. By hour 24, the Union's military capability was down to 50%. By hour 48, it was down to 30%. Human forces were everywhere and nowhere. They struck with perfect coordination, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The galaxy watched in shock. The species that had been used as cannon fodder for 50 years was dismantling the most powerful military coalition in known space. Not through overwhelming force, but through intelligence, planning, and ruthless efficiency. On the 3rd day, Veltharian commanders began surrendering. They sent messages offering to negotiate. They promised investigations and reforms. They pleaded for mercy. The humans didn't respond. They just kept fighting. Every Union military installation was systematically targeted. Every weapon facility was captured or destroyed. Every fleet was engaged and either defeated or forced to retreat. By the 7th day, the Union had lost 60% of its military forces. Their economy was collapsing as trade routes became too dangerous to use. Civilian populations on Union worlds were panicking, wondering if the humans would turn their weapons on cities. That's when Admiral Minji-O sent her second message. It went directly to High Chancellor Velrix. "We are coming to Veltharia Prime. We will arrive in 12 hours. Prepare to negotiate the terms of your surrender. If you refuse, we will take what we want by force. The choice is yours." Velrix looked at the message, then at his empty war room. Most of his commanders were dead or captured. His fleets were scattered and broken. His defenses were in ruins. The species he had enslaved had become his destroyer. He had 12 hours to decide whether to fight or surrender. But deep down, he already knew there was only one choice. The humans had won, and now they would decide what justice looked like. The clock was ticking. Soon, humanity would arrive at Veltharia Prime, and the galaxy would never be the same again.